Behind Norman Bates, behind Leatherface, behind Buffalo Bill, there were real case files, real crime scenes, and real killers. We're ranking 10 horror films whose most disturbing elements didn't come from a screenwriter's imagination. They came from documented murder cases, from unsolved small-town attacks to screen villains stitched together from multiple real killers. This countdown reveals how actual violence was transformed into the horror icons we know today. Some of these films stay disturbingly close to the record. Others borrow only fragments and build something mythic. We begin at number 10 with a case that has never been solved. In the 10th place, the town that dreaded sundown translates a community's worst nightmare into a foundational slasher. The 1976 film is a loose dramatization of the real-life Texarkana Moonlight Murders, which terrorized the Texas and Arkansas border in the spring of 1946. An unidentified serial predator, dubbed the Phantom Killer, targeted young couples on secluded lovers' lanes, ultimately claiming 5 lives and leaving 3 survivors permanently scarred. Witnesses described a terrifying figure wearing a white, sack-like hood with crude eye holes, a visual the film recreated with chilling precision. Rather than focusing on a single psychological profile, the movie excels by depicting the real-world panic that gripped the town, forcing schools to dismiss early and families to arm themselves behind locked doors. While the screenplay invents high-speed chases and a dramatic confrontation to give the unresolved case a cinematic climax, it is the film's grim documentary-style atmosphere that makes it essential viewing. But another historical killer's crimes would inspire an even more extreme level of cinematic madness. Number 9. The Clovehitch Killer centers on the deeply unsettling reality of a double life. This slow-burn thriller is heavily inspired by Dennis Rader, the notorious BTK Killer, who terrorized Kansas for decades while maintaining a facade as a devoted family man, scout leader, and church president. Dylan McDermott plays the father, Don, with an eerie, folksy charm that perfectly mirrors Rader's real-world community disguise. The film borrows key hallmarks of the BTK case, including the killer's signature knot tying and his compulsive habit of keeping hidden trophies, such as photographs of his victims. However, instead of focusing on a massive police investigation, the screenplay turns the horror inward. It shifts the perspective to Don's teenage son, who discovers these disturbing secrets stashed away in a crawl space. This creative choice transforms a sprawling true crime investigation into an intimate, claustrophobic family mystery. It is a highly effective piece of suspense, worth watching for its quiet, dread-filled atmosphere, and a chillingly realistic performance that shows how easily evil can hide in plain sight. But while this film captures the terror of a hidden domestic monster, Number 8. Henry. Portrait of a serial killer trades theatrical jump scares for a cold, fly-on-the-wall gaze into the abyss of drifting violence. Released in 1986, this raw, independent film is a loose composite inspired by the real-life partnership of Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole. In the mid-1980s, Lucas became a sensationalized figure, confessing to hundreds of murders across the country, creating an unreliable confession culture that left investigators sorting through a massive web of lies. Rather than untangling this forensic mess, the film strips away the real-world investigative confusion to focus on the bleak reality of a transient lifestyle, Michael Rooker delivers a career-defining performance, capturing the chilling, detached emptiness of a man who kills without passion or purpose. Alongside him, Tom Towles plays Otis, with an unpredictable, chaotic malice that perfectly contrasts Henry's quiet dread. By keeping the camera distant and the tone flat, the movie avoids glorification, forcing viewers to confront the terrifying randomness of predatory violence. It remains a landmark of psychological realism, essential for anyone interested in how cinema translates true crime history into pure atmosphere. But while this film explores the aimless terror of the open road, our next entry turns inward to a much more intimate household monster. In the 7th place, Dahmer presents a stark, clinical look at Jeffrey Dahmer's psychological descent, anchored by a chillingly realistic lead performance from Jeremy Renner. While composite films borrow fragmented traits, this 2002 biopic uses Dahmer's documented Milwaukee case as a literal foundation. The narrative draws directly from court transcripts, police interrogation records, and confession tapes to recreate his apartment setting at 926 North 12th Street, his 1991 arrest, and his pattern of murdering 17 young men and boys. Specific details, such as a poker chip necklace made from bone and the terrifying skull drilling experiments, are adapted directly from forensic records rather than Hollywood imagination. Renner captures Dahmer's flat, soft-spoken delivery with eerie precision, emphasizing the banality of the predator's daily routine. To maintain a tight, dramatic focus, the screenplay compresses timelines and streamlines secondary figures into composite characters, while changing victim names out of respect for the families who publicly oppose the project's release. This film is essential viewing for its quiet, unnerving atmosphere and its refusal to sensationalize real-world tragedy, offering instead a sober study of how easily extreme violence can hide behind a mundane facade. But while this film captures the clinical horror of a modern monster, our next entry turns back the clock to expose the origins of America's most infamous grave robber. Number 6, Ed Gein. The Butcher of Plainfield strips away the stylized metaphors of Hollywood to deliver a direct chronological dramatization of the real Plainfield horror. While iconic masterpieces borrow fragments of Gein's life to construct fictional monsters, this 2007 biographical film plays out like a reconstructed case file. The narrative focuses squarely on the historical record, charting Gein's life from his isolated upbringing under his mother's domineering influence to the grim November night in 1957 when police raided his farmhouse. Viewers looking for a transparent, factual look at the actual history will find it here. The movie directly recreates the grave robbing, the farmhouse discovery, and the ultimate institutionalization aftermath. Because the screenplay stays close to the documented crimes, the creative liberties are minimal, relying on compressed timelines, imagined dialogue, and simplified supporting roles, rather than an entirely rewritten plot. It is well worth watching for its historical transparency, offering a sober, documentary-like study of the reality of the case before it was permanently mythologized by pop culture. But while this biopic stays grounded in historical facts, the next movie on our list weaves multiple real-life nightmares into a single legendary horror icon. In the 5th place, From Hell plunges viewers into the dark, gaslit alleys of 1888 London to confront the world's most infamous unsolved mystery. Based on the graphic novel by Alan Moore and Eddie Campbell, this stylistic thriller dramatizes the Whitechapel murders attributed to Jack the Ripper. The film establishes a strong historical foundation by recreating the grim geography of the East End, the tragic profiles of the canonical 5 victims, and the intense public panic surrounding the original police inquests. However, the screenplay takes significant creative liberties with the unresolved case, weaving an elaborate conspiracy that implicates the royal family, the Freemasons, and royal physician William Gull. Johnny Depp plays a highly fictionalized version of Inspector Frederick Aberline, portrayed here as a clairvoyant detective, rather than the methodical investigator of the actual Metropolitan Police files. By turning historical gaps into a Gothic conspiracy, the movie serves as a fascinating study of how real violence transforms into folklore. It is essential viewing for its striking, blood-red visual palette and a hauntingly atmospheric depiction of Victorian squalor. But while this film weaves a complex web of high society secrets, our next entry returns to rural America for a far more intimate and shocking look at absolute madness. Number 4. Deranged stands as one of the most explicit cinematic dramatizations of the Ed Gein case ever filmed. Released in 1974, the same year as the Texas Chain Saw Massacre, this grim feature eschews stylized metaphors to present a direct, unsettling study of the Plainfield crimes. Roberts Blossom stars as Ezra Cobb, a reclusive rural farmer whose intense mother fixation serves as the psychological engine for his descent into madness. Following his mother's death, Cobb begins a campaign of grave desecration, exhuming corpses to reconstruct his lost household in a decaying farmhouse. Unlike other films that mask their real-world inspiration, the marketing for Deranged actively foregrounded its source material, plastering Gein's name directly onto promotional posters. The movie excels by balancing a cold, psychological docudrama atmosphere with the heightened, aggressive pacing required of 1970s horror cinema. It remains highly worth watching for its gritty realism, eerie atmosphere, and Blossom's unforgettably haunting performance, which captures the quiet banality of a severely fractured mind. By keeping the setting grounded in rural isolation, the screenplay preserves the stark reality of the actual forensic discovery before it was fully mythologized by pop culture. This unflinching look at domestic madness provides a perfect contrast to the highly polished, mainstream thrillers that would follow. But while this film reconstructs a solitary grave robber's farmhouse of horrors, our next entry explores a cinematic masterpiece that synthesized multiple real-life nightmares into a single, legendary pursuit. Coming to the top 3, the Texas Chain Saw Massacre translates real-world horror into pure, raw, cinematic nightmare. Directed by Tobe Hooper and released in 1974, this low-budget masterpiece features a loose connection to Ed Gein that is far more atmospheric than biographical. Instead of reconstructing Gein's Wisconsin case, the film extracts his most macabre crimes and converts them into terrifying iconography. The central antagonist, Leatherface, wears a mask made of human skin, while the family's decaying homestead is littered with bone trophies and furniture upholstered with skeletal remains. These visual elements were directly inspired by the gruesome discoveries at the Plainfield farmhouse in 1957. Yet the screenplay by Hooper and Kim Henkel takes massive creative liberties to build its own mythos. They relocated the story to the sweltering, sun-bleached heat of rural Texas, invented the entire cannibalistic Sawyer family and introduced the legendary chainsaw as the signature weapon of horror. This classic is highly worth watching for its suffocating, sweat-soaked atmosphere and its pioneering use of a gritty, documentary-style aesthetic that evokes overwhelming dread. Hooper's brilliant manipulation of low-budget sound design and frantic pacing turns Gein's isolated rural sickness into a collective, inescapable nightmare that targets unsuspecting teenagers. By focusing on a visceral sensory experience rather than a factual retelling, the film defined the modern slasher genre and proved how easily real violence can be mythologized. But while this landmark built a fictional family around a single killer's legacy, the remaining cases take this psychological dissection even further. In second place, Psycho represents a monumental shift in how cinema treats the concept of the human monster. Author Robert Bloch penned the original 1959 novel while living just 35 miles from Plainfield, Wisconsin, where police had arrested Ed Gein in November of 1957. The local community was still recovering from the shocking discoveries at Gein's farmhouse, following the disappearances of Mary Hogan and Bernice Worden. Rather than attempting a literal biography of the grave robber, Bloch focused on the psychological horror of Gein's severe mother fixation and the fracturing of his sanity. Alfred Hitchcock then adapted this premise for his legendary 1960 masterpiece, replacing the grisly physical reality of Gein's House of Horrors with elegant, slow building suspense. The film successfully translates the uneasy rural isolation of the Wisconsin plains into the architectural dread of the Bates Motel and the looming Victorian house that shadows it. Norman Bates's split identity, culminating in the chilling revelation of his mother persona, directly mirrors Gein's real-world desire to resurrect his mother by adopting her clothes and likeness. By smoothing the harshest forensic details of the actual crimes, the screenplay transforms raw, real-world depravity into a structured narrative of domestic dread. This classic is highly worth watching for its legendary shower sequence, its tight pacing, and Anthony Perkins's chillingly sympathetic performance, which established the modern template for psychological horror. Yet, while this film relies on a single loose inspiration, our number one film synthesizes the traits of multiple notorious predators to create the ultimate cinematic thriller. And finally, in first place, The Silence of the Lambs represents the absolute peak of true crime translation in cinema. Instead of adapting a single case file, this landmark psychological thriller synthesizes the traits of several notorious real-world predators to construct an entirely new screen legend. The antagonist, James Gum, widely known as Buffalo Bill, is a chilling composite of history's most studied killers. His desire to construct a bodysuit from human skin is a direct adaptation of Ed Gein's grave-robbing activities in the 1950s in Wisconsin. To lure his victims into his van, Gum uses a plaster cast to fake physical injury, a manipulative tactic lifted directly from Ted Bundy's operational history in the Pacific Northwest. His physical stature and high intellect reflect the terrifying profile of Edmund Kemper, while his method of holding victims captive inside a deep basement pit is modeled on the actual dungeon discovered in the house of Gary Heidnik. This fusion of real-world criminal psychology is precisely why the film sits at the very peak of our list. It shows how a highly polished procedural can transform raw forensic history into an enduring piece of cinematic myth. The movie remains a masterclass in cold atmosphere, razor-sharp dialogue, and historic performances that bridge the gap between horror and high art. It is a brilliant, unsettling study of human behavior, showing how the most terrifying monsters are always constructed from fragments of reality. If you want to uncover the dark history behind more of cinema's most famous nightmares, subscribe to the channel. Across all 10 films, a chilling reality remains. Horror's most enduring monsters are not born of supernatural fantasy, but of human nature. By translating real-world tragedies into cinematic myth, these stories exploit our deepest fear, that the ultimate evil is entirely human and entirely real. That proximity to truth is what makes them truly terrifying. Subscribe for more dark history and horror deep dives.